We worked with the same people in the same place, doing the same thing day after day, until either we got lucky enough to be able to retire or we died. It was this way for too long, but we could hide it until COVID came, and then we couldn't hide anymore. And then what happened? People started leaving their jobs in droves. We started looking for work that fulfilled us and allowed us to be better parents and partners. Those who did stay at their jobs started working more from home on their own schedule. Instead of battling traffic every morning and afternoon, we spent more time doing the things we love in the places where we love to do them. And people are moving and taking their jobs with them. Work is changing, but not always in the right direction or fast enough. So rather than being a victim of change, we're driving change in the workplace. This is the moment.
Hello, everybody. We are here for our HR Disruptor Summit 2022 virtual experience. Oh my gosh. Like, first of all,
and we look beautiful.
First of all, I just cannot even begin to explain the just most wonderful Katherine McCord to come up with this idea. You know, for our summit, the HR Disruptor Summit 2022 virtual experience today is inclusion Southern style.
Yes,
So
accommodations.
And so we are just so excited. I just, let's look here to make sure we got some.
Hat. Can we just talk about, like, my aunt? I needed instructions for this hat. This is a weird hat. I picked the wrong one. I just want to say that.
Like, it looks gorgeous. You look phenomenal. Okay.
Thank you. There we go. Like this.
I love it. Okay. So I'm getting text here because there's a little glitch here on LinkedIn.
So yes, we're going to talk about accommodations, Southern style, because nobody puts on a better party or knows how to welcome a guest like a true Southern belle.
It is so true. I mean,
it's just true.
What did you say when we were talking about it, Katherine, in the beginning, when we love to co-create together? So we were talking about if Southerners, when we invite people, right? If there's one person that has a dietary need or some exception, we're going to make sure it happens. Right?
Oh yeah. My and I learned from my family to do this, so it's like ingrained in us. So if people are coming over and I know they like a certain thing a certain way, then it's that way. And if this person likes this drink and this person likes that drink, they all have the drinks that they like. And if we have this person wants to sit here because that chair is going to be more comfortable for them, and I know that because they have this physical condition, then that's where they're going to be. And this person gets migraines, so I'm not going to seat them where there's a whole lot of light pointed directly at them. So I sit them over here. And this person talks entirely too much, which is not going to work for this person's anxiety. So we're going to sit them separately. And it's just this whole thing, but it comes very naturally to us, I think.
It really does. And, I have to say, even though I was raised up north, Ohio, it's the Midwest. Okay. Because even in the Midwest, meaning nice mattered, right?
Yeah.
Nice mattered, meaning, you accommodate people, right?
Yes.
Also I want to shout out to our dear friend, Kristen Durney.
Yes.
She wanted us to also add in here the topic of ageism, accommodating people across the board. That's been a hot button with her for this week. So wanted to make sure, even though she couldn't chime in to attend, I wanted to make sure that we throw that in there somehow, how that's going to pop up. But So when we talk about examples of exclusion, right, that we're seeing now, let's just kind of run down the list. So what are you seeing now? Exclusion, right?
Exclusion. So exclusion, everything from neurodiversity, which is everything from ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, autism, bipolar, certain types of epilepsy fit into there, all of that, mental health exclusion. You're going to have chromodiversity exclusion, which is things like cystic fibrosis, sickle cell, color blindness, things like that, all the way to Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. This hat, I'm telling you, it's just not working. And then, and then you have, of course, racial discrimination. You have age discrimination. You have religious discrimination. You have socioeconomic discrimination. You have gender. You have sex. You have all LGBTQIA. All of that, and the list just kind of goes on. Discrimination against mothers, whatever that's about.
Yeah.
Discrimination against caretakers. And by the way, I don't like this trend that now you're seeing in applications, and I've actually screenshotted some of these and posted them. Actually, companies asking you, are you a parent or are you a caretaker in the application?
What?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know
and
what's
interesting? This is part of inclusion. They think that this is part of inclusion.
Yeah, okay, so I wanted to share with you though, back in the day when I worked in corporate, I have to tell you, so I have no children. Okay. So when it came to traveling, our team traveled 12 to 20 days a month. That was part of the job. That's what's in the job. If you were a clinical field or business development, that's the job that you signed up for. So I got to be honest, I would be the first one that when somebody had to be sent out because, family, one of my colleagues' family issue, or whatever. Okay. I was sent out. Now, when it came to being promoted, John got promoted, and the response was, he has a family.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, that went up my behind. 50 million ways to sundown. But saying.
you know what really kills me about that? That's something think about this though. That's something that's said about men, not women, when it comes to promotions, because they're traditionally, historically, they're viewed as the provider. And I will give some fairness here that there are still people in the workplace in high up positions who originally started working when women were not working really very much. So I can give some leeway to those humans, just a little bit, but not very much, because frankly, it was dumb to begin with. Right. But I'll give a little bit there, but it's gotten ridiculous. And this all comes into understanding what inclusion means. So the first thing that I always try to explain to people is that inclusion has to be all encompassing. Inclusion cannot be exclusive. Period. No buts. There's no exceptions. There is no exclusion. Now, what that does not mean, so I've seen a lot of this, and I'm going to give some clarification to this. I see a lot of people go, but you have to leave room for people that don't agree with inclusion. No, that's not a minority group. That's like saying you have to leave room for someone who doesn't believe in democracy in the United States. Well, no, we don't want to be communists, or we don't want to be socialists, or we don't want to be a dictatorship, or we don't want to. So no, no, you don't. Not the same thing. Now, what you do have to do is leave room for people who believe differently from each other. So, and I do like to address this at the beginning of this type of speech, because I think it's very important to clarify. So if someone has a religious belief, they should live their life accordingly. That's what they should do. They should live their life accordingly. What they do not have the right to do is to inflict that religion onto other people. That's a whole other thing. And that's where you start to violate the inclusion and integrity and the rights of other people. So I like to clarify for companies that I speak to, where I teach things like that, and not just, that doesn't just work for religion. That's just the example that I used. But because it's one of the most common, where people just feel very strongly about it. So it's very important to remember that you need to support everyone in their beliefs, but that no one has the right to inflict those beliefs on other people. Again, period. Right. There's not an exception. Period. There's just not. And I think, I've had a lot of people talk to me about the discomfort that some people have with things like sharing bathrooms or things like that. So I always tell people, start with education, start with more practical options. I'm not going to dive into all that super specifically, but start with education. Start there, because a lot of times the fear is not actually whatever the fear is, or if there's a racial fear, or if there's a religious fear or something like that, a lot of that is not based on reality and on actual facts, on actual data. And so if you show people, hey, there's nothing to actually be scared of, this is okay. It's just like, I have a pit bull. He is a complete doofus. You've seen him. Yes. I've shown him to you. He's appeared in many of our Zoom calls, because he is under the impression that he is a 6-pound chihuahua. So I have had people come into my home that are afraid of pit bulls, or that knew I had a pit bull and they didn't want to come. And so it was an opportunity for me to educate them, because I've done tons and tons and tons of work with pit bulls. I know all the facts. I know all the things. And so I just take the time to talk to them and to give them new information to overcome those biases in their brains, right? And then we just kind of move forward. So a big part of making accommodation standard and a big part of inclusion is education.
Right.
Teaching each other about new things, and about things that are maybe a little bit frightening to them. So one question I wanted to ask you, Jan, because I know you and I have had very different work experiences over the years. What's a time when you saw that something should have been an easy accommodation or an easy workplace adjustment, but there were people that were maybe timid of that because of a bias in their own lives or because of their own beliefs?
You know, what's interesting, and as I've shared with you before, I have an older brother that has cerebral palsy. So he's 5 years older than I am. So, but growing up, even though doctors and everybody just said, he's not going to be able to do A, B, C, D, and E, that wasn't our belief system, and that wasn't our reality. We didn't project that belief in our family onto him or anything. Now, what's interesting, that was back in the day when they started doing physical accommodation, right, for people in wheelchairs, etc. And I have to be honest, I don't know if it was because it was during that time that the compliance of ADA was, really new and people were more diligent about it. From a physical standpoint, he found accommodation, but it was interesting because some people, places like he didn't have a wheelchair, but it was difficult for him to get around in some places, but he never complained. Right. So we just adapted, but I'm just trying to think, because I always worked for a good example. Company. Right.
That's a superb example, actually. And to your point, so my mother has, let me set my little teacup down. My mother has rheumatoid arthritis. You and I have talked about this, and she uses a walker. And so they're, again, not in a wheelchair. She's actually, physically mobile. And she worked in corporate buildings that actually did do a good job for the most part. But when we would go out places, or when she would go to a convention, it was just obscene what she had to go through. So the parking would be out front of the door, but the ramp would be way over here. So she'd have to walk way over to the ramp and then go back up and then come back. And then the elevators are way over here. And so then she has to go way over there. And it was just so many extra steps, and it was just so much more painful and cumbersome for her. And I guess, and like you with your brother, I grew up a little bit more conscious of these things and thinking, wait a minute, like, this is really designed terribly. Yeah. So I automatically see parking lots with too many speed bumps are difficult for people with physical disabilities for multiple reasons. There's all different kinds of things that people just don't think of because they don't have to. The same thing with the hearing impaired. I mean, good grief. There's so many things not designed. The visually impaired, it's just as bad. And especially now with this obsession with Zoom. it can be very difficult for some people who have a hearing impairment and all that to use their type of equipment, that kind of thing. Also to read lips. So people forget to face the camera properly.
Right.
So there's some extra effort there. So, it's one of those things when you're not thinking about it, it doesn't happen. And so that's kind of the Southern style, like our fun little hats here. That's kind of where that comes in. Just automatically, you just have to train your brain to automatically think of these things, to automatically think outside of yourself. So the natural default to our brains is to think of what's natural to us personally. That's a default. That doesn't make you a bad person.
No,
that is
just
the
what
default.
people do.
Yeah, that's just the default of your brain.
How humans do.
Nothing. I just want to clarify that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with you.
No.
That's a natural part of the brain.
Yeah.
But as we've decided to come together in a society, because we've decided as humans that is a better thing to do than to live completely by ourselves, as we used to have to do in the hunter-gatherer days, we need to start getting better about thinking about each other and as the whole. The whole matters more than just the one. So you have to think about, especially when you run a business, especially then, you have to learn to think outside of yourself. So thinking of things automatically from a different perspective. It's just like how I had never thought about this, but a few years ago, I saw a whole article about the problem of how jars and lids are designed because they're all designed for right-handed people. And I'm going, oh my God, I never thought about that. That's so awful. These people, all these left-handed people are having the hardest time. And there was so much of our society that was specifically designed for right-handed people or without considering left-handed people. And the same is true for neurodiverse community. You and I have done a lot of conversations on neurodiversity, and it's almost a third of the population, folks. Yeah. You ought to be considering them if you run a business. Duh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really. And one thing that I found very interesting is when I accumulated data from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, from EEO, the EEOC, the ADA, which is the Equal Opportunity Commission, and the American Disabilities Act, and then the foundation with them, as well as a few other government sites. There's about 54 to 60% of the population that could use some kind of accommodation.
Wow.
So just like we were talking about with thinking about your party and thinking about everybody's preferred drinks and preferred seating and who they might want to talk to and what's going to make them the most comfortable, their food allergies, these kinds of things.
Right.
You have to think like that as a business. That's part of inclusion. That's the biggest part of inclusion. And you have to embrace other people's experiences. And that extends past the legal requirements. Okay. Right. The legal stuff is way down here. Like, you are just scraping by, nothing to brag about. If that's what you're doing, that's not impressive. What you should be shooting to do is to make sure that everyone is comfortable. And there's actually science behind that. So Psychology Today and Harvard have both put out studies that talk about how when your mind can work more naturally, then and your body can work more naturally and function more naturally, you actually have a higher output. Again, I feel like. So when you do this for your teams, they're actually going to have a higher work output. Plus, you get to be super ethical, which is mega dope. Mega dope. When those two things align, when you can make more money, be more productive, and you also get to be super ethical, to me, that's just amazing. That's the best combination of things that can happen.
That, when we talk about like small businesses, right? Grassroots, what are the basic things that you've seen that those grassroots companies can do,
right,
to make, we can't get all crazy, Bone Quickly. We know how that rolls as far as, money, etc. But what are some really grassroots approaches can they do, or can those businesses do to show accommodation? The
great news is that to be incredibly inclusive costs very little money.
I love that. I love
that's the best part.
Yeah, let's throw that out to those COOs, right?
Yeah, but it's super awesome though. You're welcome, CFOs and COOs out there. So some great things. Number one, make sure that as you are interviewing people, that as you are hiring people, and as you are onboarding people, that you have a list of standard accommodations. So these should be things like different equipment options that are good for different physical conditions, different neurodiversities, different visual needs, different auditory needs, that type of thing. Things like cushioned mouse pads for people that might have carpal tunnels, or arthritis, as a matter of fact. Yeah. Bigger keyboards for people who might have arthritis. The screens that lessen the impact on your eyes. You can have headphones are a big one for people, for all different reasons. Yeah. Headphones are a mega one. Have different seating options that might, including standing desks if you can, yoga balls, which are super cheap compared to desk chairs. So have those. You can also have different PDF readers, different reading apps that are free to extremely cheap per person. And I'm talking like $3 a person, $5 a person.
Oh, wow.
To be able, so that people with dyslexia and different types of neurodiversities can read things more effectively and more quickly. You have, just all different kinds of just very basic, have camera off options. And let that be something that they tell you up front, so that because believe it or not, Zoom can cause seizures. Zoom can cause anxiety to flare up. It can cause all kinds of different things. And unless somebody's presenting, they don't need to be on screen. Calm down. Right. This whole I need to look at you thing is such a micromanaging thing. Calm down.
Yeah.
So, offer all these things up front. And if you want a full list, you can contact me after this. It's a very long list, so I'm not going to go into that.
No. We'll put that in the post.
Yeah, but have a standard list. Have a standard list that you offer, and then have a fill in the blank. Like, hey, and tell us anything else that you need. We are here for you. We are here to make you comfortable.
I love that those are small things. And, as you were sharing about, they're small but important things. And when I think of Southern hospitality, right? When you show up to someone's house and they have your favorite drink, right? Like you're like, oh my gosh, my favorite drink. Like you cared enough, right?
Yeah.
That's where I think the bang for the buck, that true recognition of wow, I'm touched. Like you care enough, like something small like that, to acknowledge me as another human being, like I matter.
Yes.
Right? And that's what I sit there and say, for me, like somebody that shows up, I show up at their house and they make my drink, my martini, exactly like I like it, without it's just straight vodka, ice. Like I don't like to see ice floating. People think that that's so easy, but it's not, people. It really isn't. So, but when when I show up to a party and somebody says, Jan, I got your drink for you, that makes me feel special. So that's what I'm saying. That,
and it's even more important. Right? Yeah. And it's even more important if it's something that actually makes your brain better or makes your body feel better. Not that alcohol doesn't, because it certainly does, but
but it was something that made me feel very touched. Okay. Just want to throw that out there.
Yeah. And it's so funny. And then even things like the arrangement of your building. So, ask people, do you prefer to sit closer to the restroom, or do you prefer to sit closer to the door? Or, and also keep in mind having more straight paths to bathrooms, more straight paths to a door. Don't have your cubicles blocking everything so people have to walk all the way around it. That's crazy. So look at layout, these kinds of things. Right. And people, it's all very, very simple. Very, very simple, but you just have to think.
You do. And, I want to ask, we talked about Zoom and video. I want to make sure that we touch on some of these.
Oh, the ageism, real quick. I'm sorry. You said Zoom.
Ageism.
So I'm going to tell a story.
Yep.
This is going to be a true story. This is a shout out to you, Miss Person. This is the story. This is the story that everyone always loves to hear. So here it goes. When COVID hit, so my family is very tight knit. We're all up in each other's lives just all the time, and which is great. I love it. It's not to an annoying extent. It's wonderful. So my grandmother, who was 86 at the time when COVID hit, she was very sad. because suddenly she couldn't see her grands and her great grands. I don't think she missed her daughters that much, honestly, but she did.
Dude, those kids.
I was joking about that.
Not
She
those
did,
grandkids.
but she was focused on those kids. She missed those kids. And so I said, okay, Mimi, we're going to teach you Zoom. So I got out her phone, her smartphone, which she had learned to use as soon as she got it. And we learned Zoom, and she Zoomed people, and she requested Zooms and all that kind of stuff, and accepted Zooms, and it was wonderful. And she was so excited. And she goes, I want to learn something else. I said, great. So I said, you know what? We're all tired of sending you checks or having to bring you cash. So let me set you up with Zelle. This will be wonderful, which if you don't, it's the same thing as Cash App. So I get her set up and I say, okay, so we're going to practice, we're going to request money, send money. So I sent her some money. She requested money from all 4 of her daughters, one of her grandkids. And then they go, okay, now practice sending it back. And she goes, oh no, I can't learn that. They said it's too hard. So my grandmother during COVID learned 2 new technologies and how to be a con woman.
I love that. Oh no, that's way too difficult.
So ageism is not real.
I love it. Oh,
and
that is so
Mimi is extraordinary. And yes, she can do so many wonderful, incredible things. And she was a homemaker, and she had a career. She helped run a business. She's done she's traveled the world. She was a missionary in Papua New Guinea. But everybody can learn new things, is my point. So ageism is dumb. Just don't. My father-in-law, no blood relation to me whatsoever, can run circles around me in energy-wise. He is just a ball of energy. I have so much respect for that. And his mental capacity. That man is sharp, still is to this day. My mother-in-law, same thing. My father is an educator, still constantly learning new things, teaching new things. He's absolutely fascinating human. So when you're thinking about bringing people, and I'll tell you another, I once hired a woman onto my team. She'd been the receptionist at this company for quite some time. She wanted to try recruiting. She was well over the age of 60. And I said, great. And everybody thought I was insane. And I brought her on. And
I'm just so tired of this because
I know, but she ended up being one of my top performers. She was wonderful. People loved her.
I have a question. Then why are recruiters telling people, especially older people, only put 10 years of your experience? Okay. Like, wait a minute now, so you want to cancel my wisdom? Is that what you're telling me?
So 2 things there. Number 1, they may be, because I've had to do this, and I do tell people why I'm doing it. Sometimes you have to work within the realms of reality. So when I'm doing this is not for one of my clients. When I tell people this is generally just general job search. But also I'll tell you this, frankly, this is why I stick to the 10 years or less. It's because anything you did older than that, it's not overly relevant. It's been too long. It's, and not that it's not valid at all, but it's not your sharpest skill anymore. Does that make sense?
But so the wisdom of what you've learned, that's my question.
And that's why I don't like resumes, because I want to differentiate those things. Yeah. So like, what have you done recently, but also tell me all the other coolness things about you. So that's a whole other talk about firing.
No, we just wanted to make sure that we put that in there because that was really going up my behind yesterday. Okay.
Resumes are not a good representation. That's actually a big part of the problem. But the 10 years thing, a lot of times, honestly, that's just working within the realms of reality. When recruiters say that, it's not them. It may be somebody else in their organization, or they may just be telling someone in general, hey, you're going to face ageism, so just go back 10 years.
Right.
It's just true. It's just fact. I mean, right now, if you need a job, you do kind of have to work within the realms of reality. So
what is young, so when I sit there and look at somebody that's in their early 20s, right? Yeah. And they got 2 or 3 degrees and they don't have a lot of work experience. I got to be honest. I'm looking at the fact that they don't have experience. It's not about the age. Right.
Right. Oh,
I mean, that's kind of what I'm looking at. And somebody will say, they'll look at somebody's age specifically. Yeah. And then bypass the experience because they think, oh, they're more contemporary in their thinking or whatever. I'm like, okay, that's assumption. And you know what happens when you assume?
That's
Okay.
a dangerous assumption.
Yeah, that's a very dangerous
I've
assumption.
met some young people that are stagnant, that are potatoes. I mean, when I say potato, I just mean like ain't nothing going on upstairs. I mean,
Right.
it just, young does not equal energetic. Young does
No.
not equal healthy, believe it or not. Because I've had people
Right.
tell me that, oh, but they'll have less health problems. They'll call out.
Where do you get this?
I've been unhealthy since I was a young teenager. What is wrong with you? No, that's not it.
Yeah.
So there's all these dumb misconceptions out there. And so young people are great too. And so what I tell everybody is, instead of picturing the ideal candidate when you're looking for a hire, picture what you need to solve.
Exactly.
And that's it. So when you picture the ideal candidate, the problem with that is that you've actually then created biases in your brain. Your brain's going to automatically reject candidates that don't match that, even if they would be good. Because you're thinking, oh, I'll be open-minded to different. No, you won't, because you just told your brain what it is that you're looking for. So don't do that. Just say, this is the problem I need to solve. That's it. And I love talking to a wide variety of people for every type of role. It's always cool. And don't keep hiring the same thing, by the way. Like, for instance, if you have a sales team and you have 3 sharks, get a consultative person, get somebody with a parenting approach, get somebody who's your best buddy approach, get all of those different approaches, because you're missing your audience. So, and it's the same thing with customer service, because not everybody responds to the same customer service rep. And side note, please stop scripting your customer service people. It makes all of us want to stab them.
Yes. Oh my God. Yeah. Like this, just,
it's awful. So, but you know, it's really one of those things. I have a lot of people talk to me about, well, how do you balance the realism of racism and ageism and sexism and, prejudice against LGBTQIA and all of this? How do you balance the reality with what things should be? Because if you're going through a hire process, you probably need a job. Most people don't work unless they have to. Right. So it's just true. And so unless you're like me and you just really enjoy it. But, it's sometimes you have to figure out what your lines are. This is what I tell on the candidate side. It's not companies. Companies, this is not for you. This is for the candidates. Candidates, find your lines. What are the things that you're okay with living with every single day? Because if that interview process is that way, trust me, working there is going to be double whatever you just experienced. So find your lines. For me, my lines are real low. Like, I just don't put up with any nonsense. So that's why I tell a lot of companies, you probably should not ever try to hire me, because
probably won't work well.
As a consultant, great. But but that's because you're there to listen to me and not, I don't. As soon as something doesn't show integrity, I'm out. As soon as something shows racism, sexism, any kind of ism, I'm out. And so, I'm not saying you have to have those same lines, but find your lines and work within that. Also look for opportunities with companies who will be open to change. So if during an interview you say, hey, just so you know, this wasn't very comfortable for me. Do you mind if we do it this way? And I go, oh, okay, cool. That's a company that's open to change.
Right.
That may be a great organization for you to dive into, where just you saying, hey, that doesn't really work for me, might make all the difference. You don't have to be like a huge pioneer or whatever, or like, or take on a cause, but just, be somewhere that makes you comfortable. Now, on the company side, you have no excuse. There's too much information out there. It's like somebody throwing an epically bad party where they didn't pay attention to the guest list. And they didn't pay attention to have enough food. So they run out of food halfway through. They run out of beverages. They only had beer. Nobody wanted beer. And they just throw an epic. There's no reason for that. There's no reason. If your party is that bad, you didn't try. You just wanted everybody to come to you, and you didn't give any effort into them. And it's the same thing here. You're not going to be perfect with inclusion, probably ever, but you're definitely not going to be perfect right off the bat. I'm still learning, and I teach this stuff.
And it changes,
right?
Because human behavior changes, human needs change. So, but just to be open to create that circle of people that you can
Yes.
Ask. Say, hey, what do you think about this? That's why I think it was so important to be able to say, what are the small things, or the, like, don't think it's going to cost you. Like, you don't have to move a flipping bathroom, people. Let's start small. Okay.
Like,
I mean,
here's one of my big ones is ask people what they need and do that. And if somebody tells you that something you're doing is wrong, gross, offensive, anything like that, you don't get to say no. And here's why. What they just told you means that that's fact for them. So that means that you are doing something that's not quite jiving. So you need to find some kind of alternate. I will also tell you that if one speaks up, 10 more think the same.
right.
So if that one person tells you, I feel like this is racist, or I feel like this is sexist, or I feel like this is not neurodiverse inclusive, or whatever, other people feel that way.
Well, then, and you know what? And what I always like is, don't be just part of the problem, be part of the solution. So I want to add here that people, if you see something that concerns you, or, hey, it's making me uncomfortable, I'm sorry, but you got to come up with a solution. Just don't come and complain.
Or at least have an idea. You don't have to like solve the entire problem. So it may be a very big problem.
Just be part of the solution.
Yeah,
or a positive solution to be proactive, to say, hey, can we figure this out?
You're right.
Right.
Yeah.
Instead of the shame and blame. I think that's really what annoys me, is when they come up, and that's just starting a problem, right? I mean, you got to come up and bring it up. You got to bring it up. So I want to be specific on a few things. So if something is very grand, like let's say you're telling a company, hey, have you noticed that like everyone that works here is white, and where there's 500 of us, and that's kind of weird. Right? If it's something like that, then yeah, there's going to be a whole process, right? Because now you need to do diversity hiring, all this kind of thing. So then you may not be in HR, you may not, but come to them and go, okay, if you want somebody, in a focus group or whatever, I'm here. Just raise your hand and say, I'm also willing to be part of the solution. Now, sometimes the solution, or sometimes there's not a solution. It really is as simple as you have to fire someone, or just cut it out. Like if you're, for instance, I recently had this one come up where a woman reached out to me about a dress code at her company, and they specifically banned certain Black hairdos in their dress code. And so she asked me how to handle it. And I said, quite frankly, you're just going to have to look at them and say, this is racist. Like, I'm sure you didn't mean it that way. Right.
Or maybe you do think they meant it that way and you don't want to say that. I don't know. But in her case, she really did think they didn't mean it. And so I said, okay, so just go to them and say, I know you didn't mean it, but this is racist. It's very uncomfortable. And I would really appreciate it if we would amend this, because then they just have to amend. There's nothing that she can do. So sometimes you're going to have to call out something gross. If somebody is sexually harassing other people, if somebody is doing something that, sometimes you're just going to have to be like, hey, somebody's got to deal with this.
Somebody's got to deal with this. Like I need an advocate. Like I need somebody to stick up for me. Like, because that's really what you're asking for. You're asking for an advocate to support you. And so I think that's what I want to make sure that people understand. This is not about just coming up and, calling your employer. Please be conscious about if there's an issue that you're uncomfortable with. Let's start thinking this through about how we can cut through some animosity here, because that doesn't get us anywhere. Right. And that shame and blame does not get us anywhere.
I think it's important too for companies to know how to handle that type of thing. So if you're in HR and someone comes to you and they feel like something is sexist or racist or against their religion, or somebody feels discriminated against because of their sexuality, anything like that, it's very important to know how to ask them, more information, how to ask them to help, because sometimes you may need more clarification. And I've seen some very ugly posts on LinkedIn about, if somebody tells you this, you should just accept it, move on. Well, hold on. I may need more clarification in order to help, in order to stop it, in order to realize, because sometimes you're not given enough information. And so you might need to ask probing questions. And so one of the things that here's some of my tips for when this happens. So if you're HR or a leader of any kind and someone comes to you, first of all, if you're not an HR, get an HR person. If you don't have one, I know some great ones who will hop on the phone with you for a very nominal fee and and help you out with this. So get an HR person on the line just to help make sure that everything is legally asked and that type of thing. And then start with, okay, for clarification, I would like more information, please. And make it very clear that I'm asking these things not to question you or to doubt you. I just need to understand better so that I can fix the problem. And dive into that. Ask your questions. Ask them if they would like to be part of the solution. Ask them, because another one that does come up is if you're having to complain against your boss, you may be afraid of retribution, because companies may have all the policies they want to about how you can't do that. It's real life. You complain against your boss, your goose is cooked. It's just what it is. So ask them if they want to be part of the solution. Ask them what they're comfortable with. Ask them if they know of anybody else feeling this way that can also shed some light. But don't pressure them. Just say, hey, if you know of anybody, send them my way. You don't need to give me names. Don't give me names. Just send them to me, please, if you know of anybody. Because this is not a witch hunt. And that's how it's going to start to feel really quick if you ask for names. So don't ask for names. Just say, hey, if you know somebody, please come, or send out an email and say, hey, this was brought to our attention. We want to fix it. If that's appropriate for the situation, and say, please come forward if you have ideas, or if you've experienced this. So it's really important to gather more information. And then it's very important to make sure that the person understands that you're regretful that this happened to them. So to use our examples earlier, if somebody comes up to you who is physically disabled or physically challenged in any way, shape, or form, comes up and says, hey, it really sucks that I'm having to park way over here, walk way over here, come up, do a lap around the cubicles just to get to my cubicle. And I'm here, can I possibly move? Go, oh my God, I'm so sorry. We did not realize when we put you there that I'm so very sorry. And apologize. That goes so far. If you're having problems with racism at work, please get somebody to come in to teach and to educate people. And you shouldn't have to teach people not to be racist. That's not what I'm saying. But some people do. There are certain things that people say and do that they do, honest to God, do not realize are racist. So if you have somebody who will explain that to them, and a formal trainings or HR counseling session is often a great way to do it. But also, folks, have speakers constantly coming in to teach, or educators constantly coming in to teach about these things. Teach your workplace about inclusion. Teach them about each other, essentially. So
that's a big thing about creating that relationship with others. Because that's where it starts. I think because getting to know one another on an individual basis, because this, our dear friend Seth Butler, one of the facilitators at the summit as well, we're just really need to educate people to look at others individually, one person at a time, right? And let's quit lumping people together. So, oh my gosh, my friend, we have gone over, and oops. I love it. I mean, we could just speak
but keep it
hours.
Just keep it, guys. Just keep it simple, and remember to just think of other people first. You have to train your brain. It's not your fault, but train your brain to think of others first and to ask people what they need, and
just
you will be successful.
Inclusion Southern style, right? That's what we're coming back to.
Accommodation Southern style. Yes.
Accommodating others. What can I do for you? Can I help? How can I help you? Just really turning into that mindset, I think, is really sums it all up, right?
And if your people are in pain, acknowledge that pain. Don't ignore it.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
I love it, my friend. Thank you so much. And we're going to be putting Katherine's information into the HR Disruptor Summit 2022 page on LinkedIn and for chat. This will be up for replay as well. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming and attending. Our last virtual experience will be next Thursday, the 29th. And then we'll be so excited, and we'll be going to the in-person experience from the 5th through 7th. So you don't want to miss that. Again, all are welcome. We want everybody cross from all industries and positions for the first in-person experience. So thank you again, Katherine. I love you, my friend. Can't wait to see you in a couple of weeks. And everybody, please put in your thoughts, your feedback, and look forward to seeing you next week. Bye, everybody.